ago, I filmed myself stacking a cake that I was working on, and I decided to post it in the internet to share it with my students. Back then, there were not a lot of videos on how to do things with cake, so it was a nice way to just share things with people. So basically, what happened is I used the wrong music, I used copyrighted music, and the video cannot be watched by many people. So I just decided to use the same video and redo it, and this time I will explain what I'm doing. The first thing I do is measure the height of my cake. I use a straw for this, and it doesn't matter if you use a boba tea straw or a regular straw. You want to make sure that you measure exactly where the cake ends. For buttercream, I cut the straw a bit shorter, maybe around 1/8 of an inch shorter than the measurement, but for fondant I leave it the same height as the measurement I took. Once you have your straw measurement, you want to use this as a guide to cut all your dowels. I am using cardboard dowels for this cake. Cardboard dowels are really good. They're easy to cut, they're pretty strong, they're covered in wax. They have gotten to be a little bit more difficult to find. You can find them in Amazon. They are made by a company called Lady Mary Ateco, and if you do a search you can find them. But you can also use plastic dowels, and you can cut those sometimes with PVC cutters, and they are easy to cut with PVC cutters. A lot of people tend to use the regular 63mm dowels that you can find in the craft stores. These are good dowels, but they can be on the thin side, so if you don't use them properly, they can go sideways. Some people sometimes use too many, that can break the structure of the cake. You can use too little, that won't support the cake, or they tend to leave them either too below the cake or above the cake. There's a certain way to use them properly. You can also use bigger, thick wooden dowels, but just make sure they're made just for food purposes. I usually have a good eye and I measure with my fingers where the dowels are gonna be placed. If you're not good with this, you can use a cake pan of the size that is gonna go on top and just mark where it's gonna go, and that way you'll know where the dowels are gonna be placed. I place my dowels between 2.5 to 3 inches apart, and I make sure I have one in the center too. I cut my dowels for buttercream 1/8 of an inch lower than the cake, so I can actually go around with my spatula and make a bed for the cake I'm gonna place on top of it. This levels the buttercream and it makes a great bed for the cake that goes on top, which is very strong. If you don't want to do this step, just make sure that the buttercream is level and you leave the dowels at the same level of the buttercream. The same you would do with fondant cakes. It's time to stack our cakes, and the first thing I do is detach my cake from the board. There is a cake board underneath the cake. I'm just detaching the buttercream from the board that I used just to ice my cake. I lift it with the spatula, place my hand underneath, and just place it on top of the cake. I am not gonna worry at this moment about the buttercream. I will fix that later. I do not work with a cold cake. This cake is at room temperature, but if it's easier for you, you can work with it while it's cold. As you can see, my cake is not centered. Not a problem. Just take your spatula and lift it and just move it slightly where it goes and keep smoothing your borders. I usually put a pearl border in cakes like this, but I like sometimes to just make sure I have a clean edge, so I add some buttercream, and with my spatula I just clean the edge, and with some Viva paper I make sure to smooth it out as much as I can. With Swiss or Italian buttercream, your cake should be cold and you can use a hot spatula to fix your borders. Now we're moving to the next tier and we're gonna do the same. Measure with the straw, measure our dowels, still using cardboard dowels, It is very important that whatever you use to measure the height of your cake, it is the same piece you use to cut all your dowels. That way, all of them will be the same height. Sometimes people change and use one dowel to measure the next, and they end up with different sizes, and that can affect the cake. Once again, after I place my dowels, I take the buttercream and level it to my dowels. I love the fact that I hit my cake while I was working on it. So I left it here so I can show you what I do to fix it. So here it is. Take some paper, just smooth it out with your hands. This is crusting buttercream. If you have Swiss or Italian buttercream, you will need a hot spatula to smooth it out. But things like this happen, all you have to do is fix it. It's really not that bad. Usually fondant is easier in that sense because if you touch it like that, it doesn't get damaged as easily. But as you can see, it is a real easy fix. Now it's time to stack again, and here I am detaching my cake from the board. Remember, there's always a cake board underneath the cake. It is important because it is what will hold the cake with the dowels. The dowels won't hold just through cake. You need a cake board underneath the cake. My cake board is hidden by the buttercream. Make sure that your cake is centered. Lift with your spatula, move it slightly and center it. Don't worry about holes at this point. Those are fixable. Take some buttercream, take your spatula and smooth it out. Remember, in cakes like this one, for example, I have a pearl border and my border won't be seen at all. I'm just doing this because I like a clean edge. I do feel though that sealing the edge of the cake makes for a better attachment, so I always do this with my cakes. Clean up with some Viva paper, and now you're ready for your next tier. The next tier is a 6-inch cake, and since they are lighter cakes, I do like to use straws for them. I do recommend the thick straws. They're called boba tea or colossal, or some people call them bubble straws. They're thicker and they're stronger, so they hold very well. And there are actually some cake companies that make straws that are meant for cakes that you can also use. I personally don't feel comfortable using straws to hold bigger cakes. Cakes can be really heavy, so personally, you won't ever see me using a straw for bigger tiers. But some people use them and they like them. That's a personal choice. I use the cardboard dowels usually on smaller cakes. 4 tiers is the biggest one I would use them. When it's 5 tiers, 6 tiers, I tend to change it. I use either PVC or wood dowels, but the thicker ones. It is important that you have a strong system for your cake, especially for big ones. There are many other systems you can use to stack your cakes. This is just one. Now it's time to hold all the tiers together, and I sharpen my dowel. My dowel is almost the height of the cake minus maybe 2 inches. You don't want it sticking out. You want it inside the cake, but not too low. You want it to hold all the tiers together. I just help myself with another dowel to push it all the way inside. In this cake, I am putting 2 dowels because the delivery is being done by someone else. So I just make sure that the cake will hold. Remember, the placement of dowels might change, especially if you have taller cakes. So above 4 tiers, things might change and your stacking method should change. You need something stronger. Once you have placed the dowels, you can put some buttercream and seal the holes. Smooth it out with some paper towel and you're done. The cake that I was working with in here was a package cake. Package cakes are low-budget cakes that hotels offered as part of a venue when a bride gets married. So they're very basic cakes. You have to work fast and move fast. So stacking this way helps me just move faster. Keep in mind that there are other systems out there that are very strong and can support the cakes really well too. Some of them come with an extra expense of materials, but they work really well. I will write a blog about it soon, so just look for the links on the comment box below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Visit me in Facebook, Instagram, and keep showing me those cakes that you're making. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Until next time, ta-ta!